Hey, Mike Rain here with Canadian Musician, right now in downtown Toronto, and have the absolute pleasure of having these two stars of Canadian country music here together in the same spot, Tim Hicks and Chad Brownlee. Guys, how you doing?
Doing great.
Yeah, doing really well.
Yeah, thanks for having us here.
Oh, of course, and thanks for inviting me. And in case folks haven't heard, the reason you're here together is, well, your respective solo tours will be meeting up for 8 dates in Western Canada in January of 2017.
They are?
Oh shit! Good thing I told you guys. Oh my god. No, well, I gotta ask then. Let's start with this. Obviously, is there a relationship there between you guys prior to this? Like, how did these co-headlining dates come about?
Yeah, I mean, especially in Canadian country, it's a pretty small community. So everybody hangs with everybody. And I mean, Chad and I first met in 2012. Him and Dallas took me on my first national tour. It wasn't, I played 5 dates in Ontario with them, but it was my first time doing artist dates, opening for, guys that were out on the scene really doing something. So, ever since then, I mean, I've had nothing but respect for those two fellas, and just so happy that we were able to kind of align the stars enough to do 8 shows together. Yeah. It's gonna be a whole lot of fun. Yeah.
And, well, aside from those 8 dates, you guys will each be on your respective solo tours after that. Tim, you'll be on the Shake Your Walls tour, obviously, in support of your most recent album. Chad, you'll be on the Hearts on Fire tour, obviously, also in support of your most recent album. Were those 2 separate tours booked, and you kind of realized you'll be in the same place at the same time and made these dates happen, or did it start with this co-headlining thing?
Yeah, it wasn't fully booked. We both just had the idea of when we wanted to go out on tour. And when I was putting mine together, I had Tim at the top of my list as far as guys that I would love to be on the bus with and travel across the country. So, it was my team talked to his team, and we talked about the logistics. And funny enough that he was planning on going out at the same time. So we thought, hey, why don't we combine these tours, make the best show that we can for the fans that are coming out to these shows. And, the rest is history. Here we are.
Yeah, just make it exciting for people. I think that we get stuck. I can't speak for all genres because I'm just involved in country in Canada, but it just feels like you sort of get stuck in the routine of put out a record, put out a single, go on the road, put out a record, it's like, well, what can we do that's different that will, bring value to people? And especially in this day and age, people work hard to get that $40 to be able to come to a show, and it just didn't make sense to go and play the same markets 2 weeks from one another. It's like, well, let's just go do this together and have a really kick-ass party and give people value for their money and give them a great night of entertainment.
Will essentially be just that, like 2 headlining shows that are just happening on the same night in the same place. Will there be kind of collaboration between you two? Will you be alternating who's, quote unquote, the headliner? Like, how will that all work?
Yeah, we'll rotate each night. So whoever starts, obviously, in the first night, we switch it the next. And anytime, you get together on a co-headlining tour, you obviously want some sort of collaboration. And I never like to give away too much before the tour, but it's definitely on the front of our minds. Yeah.
And you had mentioned, Tim, that you had gone out with Chad, and I think it was Dallas Smith, you said, and you'd also used the term that's a small community, referring to the Canadian country community. That kind of leads me into what was going to be my next question perfectly, which is, in light of this co-headlining tour and you saying it's a small community, is there a lot of camaraderie within the country industry in Canada, or is it more of a sense of competition or a healthy mix of the two?
Yeah, I think that probably you get a healthy mix of both. I'd say that there's more camaraderie than there is competition. I mean, it's almost like a family, and in every family you're going to have squabbles, and that's just the way it is. But for the most part, I think it's healthy competition, if anything, and especially in this day and age, and I know Chad will say the same thing, the bar in Canada keeps getting raised higher and higher and higher, which is awful for a guy like me. So, to try and keep up constantly, wow,
You're
but
one of those guys, Tim, that's raising the bar.
That being said, what an exciting time to be an artist in Canada, especially with social media happening the way that it has, and like I said, the talent just ascending, the songs getting better, the production getting better. And we have such a unique perspective being Canadian, especially so we bring a different thing to country music up here, and I think that a lot of Americans are just kind of starting to check it out. Like, wow, they've got a thing up there. Y'all have country music up in Canada? It's like, yeah, we do have country music up in Canada. You should check it out. It's a little bit different. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man.
recently, and again, to bring up Dallas Smith, who I also just had the pleasure of speaking with recently. And again, Tim, you were saying how the bar keeps being raised. There seems to be a real renaissance of Canadian country music. Maybe even not renaissance, because that implies that it's returning to something. It seems like it's a golden age, maybe you could say, of Canadian country music right now. But Dallas may be kind of at the top of that mountain right now within the country. And he was saying there's a competitive side to him that would love to try to tackle that big, monster market to the south of us. But at the same time, creatively and personally, he's very happy being where he's at in Canada and really kind of capitalizing on that. And it's providing him with a, successful, stable career. Yeah. And he's not sure he wants to make all the personal and other sacrifices that it would require to, do what it takes to tackle that American market. I'm wondering how that compares to you guys. Is that American market kind of a light that's attracting you right now, or is that on your mind?
Man, it's a hot topic of discussion in my house. I mean, I'm married. I have 2 young kids. Given the election results, I don't know that. I don't know. I just don't know anymore. Things are crazy. But it's tempting in a way. But I love Canada. And I've had that discussion with Dallas, and he firmly says, "I'm not doing it. I love BC. I love my home. I like going to Nashville for 2 weeks at a time, write my songs, and going home." That's not as easy for me, because I love it down there. I love being able to go to work every day and write songs. Not that he can't up here, but it's a way of life in Nashville. So I'm kind of on the fence, and I don't know that I have an answer other than it's a hot topic of discussion. Yeah. What about you?
How do you feel about that, Chad?
Yeah, it's not one of those things where I would say I'm not going to pursue it or I am going to pursue it, because like you said, it's a huge mountain to climb. But for me, just it's nourishing what I have here in Canada as well. And I go down to Nashville quite a bit to write. I'll spend 2 weeks to a month at a time down there. So it's staying present, keeping your name kind of front of mind with some people and the relationships and whatnot. And I just focus on the creative. I try to just keep writing something fresh for the fans. I've been through 4 records and trying to evolve each time. So that's kind of my focus. And I see the evolution of whether I go outside of Canada as more of just the reflection of the music that I'm making. And obviously there's some business elements to it that you need to be aware of, and you need to have some sort of strategy. But for the most part, I like to be a little bit organic with the evolution of my career. And so if it happens to bring me down there, it does. I mean, I'm a single guy with no kids, so I am a bit of a gypsy and willing to go anywhere. But myself too, I love British Columbia. It's where I grew up, and I'm pretty rooted there. But I want to expand my music. I think any artist or band will say that they want to expand. Where that is, whether it's Europe, Australia, United States, each market is so different. But just continuing to push forward, and hopefully I can do this for years to come. It's a pretty fun gig.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
And also within the last few months, I've had the chance. Well, not just I spoke to Ron Kitchener, who's obviously head of Open Road Records, your label, Tim, and you may have heard of him. I'm not sure. And my co-editor Andrew had the pleasure of speaking with Mike Denny, obviously the head of MDM, Chad's label, and both of them within those respective conversations had kind of made reference or had started talking about the, I guess, age diversity of country music fans now compared to generations past. That within the last, I keep saying recently, but it's not even that recent anymore. But it's within the last 10 years, let's say, there seems to have been I guess just a new youthfulness maybe to the country music fan base that has really revitalized, especially commercially, country music as a genre. Do you think it's kind of a chicken and the egg question? Like, did that come with country music embracing other styles and becoming a more upbeat sort of realm of music? Did the fans help introduce that? Like, do you have any sense of essentially why that's happened, and is there an interplay between the fans and the artists in that sense?
Yeah, I have a theory about that. I think that a lot of bands that came out in the 70s under the umbrella of Southern rock would be considered country in this day and age. And I think that the reason for that, and the reason for the explosion, absolutely. So I think that one of the reasons that the genre exploded is because we live in a time when people have 3,000 songs on an iPod, and that's going to run the gamut from Skrillex to Johnny Cash and everything in between. And so, you know, a genre like country, and from what I understand, this debate's been going on for a long, long time about what's country, what isn't country, why is country changing? It's going, you know, a guy like myself, I can't speak for you, but you know, I listened to a lot of different music when I was growing up, and so that comes out. You know what I mean? So you're going to get a little bit of Led Zeppelin because I listened to a ton of it as a teenager, and then you're going to get a little bit of Blue Rodeo because I listened to a ton of it. And you know, somewhere in all those things is what I do. You know what I mean? And so I think that because country has been so accepting of you know, doing different kinds of things, whether it's rock country or pop country or kind of like the rap country that was happening there for a while. You know, it's a great home for somebody that kind of walks a few different lines like myself. So, what would you say?
How would you feel about that, Chad? Like, maybe the one way of framing it is for you growing up and maybe starting out as a country artist. Was there any defined sense of what country is to you, or were you taking influences from a number of genres?
Yeah, I grew up more in the 90s country, you know, Garth Brooks, Alan Jackson, Clint Black, you know, Alabama. My parents had those cassette tapes in their house, and so that was kind of my first taste of country, and I'm sure it's bled into, you know, me as an artist and me as a songwriter. So, I mean, you look back in history to any genre, and it evolves. It changes. You know, when Johnny Cash came on, I'm sure people are like, that's too rock and roll. And that's just what we're living in right now. We're living in through a transition phase of the genre, and I think it's kind of exciting. And you never know where it's going to go from here. So I'm lucky my style of music has been accepted in this genre, and hopefully it will for years to come.
And I guess on that note, just to talk, before we close up, to talk a bit about how each of you respectively got your starts, because there's two interesting bits I read about each of you. Maybe Chad, I'll start with you, since I keep seeming to go to Tim first. But I'm sure your fans know, but maybe some folks listening, watching don't know that you are actually a very successful hockey player. Were drafted by your home province, Vancouver Canucks, which is doesn't get much more Canadian than that. But like, well, was music something you're always doing on the side? Like, how did that transition happen to what must have been a pretty serious athletic career into like taking on music full time?
Yeah, hockey was obviously number one for a lot of years up until the last year that I decided to stop playing. But I started playing piano when I was 8 years old. Did that till I was 12. And when I was 12, apparently I didn't think it was cool anymore. So I picked up the tenor saxophone. So much cooler than the piano. And then started playing acoustic guitar at 17 when I was playing junior hockey. And it was more of kind of a release for me from the game. And something where I could just take my mind off of it. And at no time did I think this is what I wanted to do for a career, because I was drafted out of junior. So that was it. You know, that was my tunnel, was strictly hockey. So there was a big shift. It was 2007, 2008 when I decided to hang up the skates. I had surgery on both my shoulders, and the injuries kind of pushed me out of the game. I just wasn't the same player. And I've always been driven by a passion to do something. And as soon as I lost my passion for hockey, it was literally like music just leapfrogged over top of it. And it was instantaneous, my identity shift. But I mean, it took a little while to be comfortable in my new skin, saying, okay, this is going to be my new identity. But I just followed my heart, man. Simple as that, and what I wanted to do. And luckily I had support of the people around me that believed in what I was doing. And I just went for it, because I figured life's too short to do anything besides what you love to do. And it's turned out pretty good. It's been, I guess, 8 years now since I made that decision, and hopefully it's at least another 8 from now.
Where did you catch your break, if there was one point? Like, did Mike Denny from MDM, was he the one that signed you? Like, how did that, I guess, that label career happen? Yeah,
so MDM is the first label that I signed to. So all my management is the same since day one. It was actually Mitch Merritt who met with me. I had made a 6-song EP, and it wasn't really country. It was kind of rock. It was kind of singer-songwritery. And he took me down to Nashville, and I ended up writing one of my first singles while I was down there. And it went top 20 at radio, and we just haven't looked back since. But Mitch was the one that brought Mike Denny into the fold, my tour manager, Carmen Choney, who he had worked with before. So, yeah, it's still the same team from day one, and then it just has grown since then. And we've got a lot of people at MDM and working around me. So it's a good team. It's got a real kind of family vibe to it, and it's been a great ride.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And Tim, you mentioned that you're a family man, have wife and kids at home, and I'd read, I forget who it was with, I should give proper credit, but in another interview you had done, you had told a story of at one point you actually you'd become maybe disenchanted, you thought about kind of hanging up, exactly, packing it in and quitting music as a career focus, and you said it was your wife that kind of talked you up, re-energized you, and it was only a few weeks later, apparently, that you ended up going and signing with RGK.
It was not quite like that, but it was sort of like that. I was a working musician for many, many years before I ever had a song on the radio, and 18 years before I ever, and I'm playing 5 nights a week. So that's just what I was doing. I tried all through my 20s to get a record deal, couldn't get anybody to call me back, and I had done it for long enough that I had sort of proven to anyone that had told me that I couldn't do music as a career that they were wrong. For whatever reason, it was important to me to prove everyone wrong. I don't know, go figure. So, it was hard some nights to peel myself off the couch and go play cover songs again at another chicken wing bar. And that's what I was doing. And, I remember feeling that, like, I don't want to go. I'm so sick of it. I'm tired of dealing with it. The pressure of booking my own calendar. And like, that was a lot of anxiety for me, looking 4 months ahead at blank pages going, how am I going to fill this? Maybe this was it. Maybe this is the end. Maybe the phone's going to stop ringing. And I asked her if she could get me a job at the Region in Niagara. And she said, "Why?" And I said, "I've had enough. Like I've done it. I'd accomplished what I wanted to accomplish, which was playing music for a living." Yeah. And she kind of gave me the, "Oh, boo-hoo. Wow, really tough life you have, getting to do something you love every night." And she kind of put it in that perspective like a good wife would, right? And, it was through those eyes that I thought, all right, this is really a wonderful thing that I get to go out every night and sing and play guitar. And I was doing band gigs, trio gigs, duo gigs, whatever gig I could do in order to make ends meet. Yeah. And so it wasn't too long after that I kind of got my break, which I was playing just down the road here at King and John on a Wednesday night. I used to play Wednesday nights by myself, and this songwriter happened to be there. He said, "I like your voice. Do you write?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, let's write some songs." And he wound up taking those songs to Nashville and played them for Ron Kitchener at Open Road. Yep. He said, "I hate these songs, but there's something with this guy's voice." And next thing I know, I was headed to Nashville in my minivan with a 5-week-old baby wrapped in a blanket, like a couple of kooks chasing a dream. And that's really how it happened. It was unbelievable. Mm-hmm.
Wow. That is incredible.
It's 100% the truth.
Who's that songwriter that you mentioned?
Casey Marshall, yeah. So he had a partner, has a partner named Neil Sanderson, who plays drums in 3 Days Grace. Those two were responsible for, writing the early songs that sort of led to my record deal with Open Road.
Very, very cool.
Yeah.
And now to bring it full circle, it's going to result in this. Before we close up, I want to make sure people know where you guys are going to be playing. Is where I'm going with this. And but yeah, to bring it full circle, you guys are going to be out on the road for 8 dates together in Western Canada. Being Western Canada, I'm assuming that's Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton. Where else are you guys going to be hitting up?
From Kelowna to Winnipeg. So
Kelowna, Vancouver, Fort McMurray, Edmonton, Calgary, Saskatoon, Winnipeg.
Okay. Yeah.
And then after you guys depart, where do your respective tours bring you, and where can people look for you individually?
Yeah, Ontario. So once we part ways with Chad, I'm going to pick up Jason Blaine and the Rivertown Saints, play some dates in Ontario, and then head down east with the James Barker Band. So we'll wind up going. Our run will start in Kelowna with Chad and wind up in Halifax.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
And I've only got a couple shows after that. We'll be back in Regina, and then one more to announce. So yeah, just a short little stint after we part ways.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, guys, again, Tim Hicks, Chad Brownlee. Guys, this has been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you for making the time,
Appreciate it, man. Yeah.
Cheers, man.
Yeah.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.